A business tycoon rushed home from a crucial deal in Miami, only to witness a scene that would shatter his perfect life, his 8-year-old daughter being dragged away in handcuffs by LAPD officers. He ran toward them, desperate to stop it, but froze when he heard the reason for her detention. Now settle in and relax as I share this story with you. I hope it serves as the perfect companion to help you drift peacefully into sleep tonight. And with that, let's begin. What city are you watching this video from, and what time is it? By the way, if you're enjoying my videos, I'd be so happy if you could subscribe to my channel and like this video. The black SUV pulled up to the towering iron gates of the Whitmore estate in Beverly Hills. Morning sunlight struck the vehicle's surface, reflecting the face of Richard Whitmore, a man in his early 40s. Tall, wearing an impeccably tailored cream-colored suit, his expression shadowed by exhaustion from an overnight flight. He pulled out his key, staring at the house that once felt like sanctuary but now seemed like a cold, impenetrable fortress. Inside, everything had changed. The grand foyer reeked of overpowering perfume. Abstract paintings covered the walls, and a palette of deep crimson dominated the space, eclipsing the soft whites and grays that had been Sarah's preference, Sarah, his late wife. Richard stood for a long moment before an old photograph of him, Sarah and Sophia, their little daughter, before turning at the sound of sharp heels clicking down the marble staircase. Marcella descended, looking flawless, magazine perfect. Her blonde hair was styled in loose waves, dyed a shade too golden to be natural, and she wore a form-fitting scarlet red dress that hugged every curve. She offered a smile, but it didn't quite reach her eyes. Have you ever felt like someone was hiding something from you? Drop a comment if you've experienced that gut feeling that something wasn't right. I wasn't expecting you back so soon, she said, her voice smooth as silk. Richard set down his suitcase, adjusting the collar of his cream suit. The Miami deal closed earlier than expected. I wanted to surprise Sophia. That name made Marcella's eyebrow lift subtly, a movement she quickly concealed. She's in the garden. But you should shower and rest, you look exhausted. Richard nodded, crossing through the foyer. In the kitchen, Mrs. Lopez, the elderly housekeeper, was wiping down the counter. She looked up, her voice low. Welcome home, Mr. Whitmore. The house has changed so much. Richard paused, offering her a slight smile of gratitude. He didn't know she was the only one who still held a piece of this home's soul. The garden was bathed in sunlight. Sophia sat on the grass, her head bent over a sketchbook. When she saw her father, she jumped up, running toward him and throwing her arms around him with all her might. Daddy! You really came back. Yes, sweetheart. I'm right here. Richard chuckled, squeezing her tight. That small, familiar presence dissolved all his fatigue. He inhaled the scent of her hair, sweet like white daisies, a fragrance Sarah used to love. From the back doorway, Marcella watched them, a glass of orange juice in her hand. Her lips curved, whether in a smile or a sneer wasn't clear. The glass tilted slightly, and drops splashed onto the floor. Mrs. Lopez, standing nearby, caught Marcella's gaze and shivered slightly. If you're already sensing the tension building, hit that like button. This is just the beginning. At breakfast, the atmosphere was deceptively calm. Marcella spoke about an upcoming charity gala, skillfully steering the conversation toward Whitmore Technologies. So they say you're planning to step down as CEO? Richard calmly cut a piece of toast. I'm tired. I want to spend time with Sophia and focus on the Children's Foundation project I'm building with Valerie. Marcella set down her knife with a soft clink. Charity funds, city contracts. Suddenly you've become so philanthropic. Helping others makes me feel like I'm still alive. Richard stood, giving her a light pat on the shoulder. Thank you. I'm heading out to see Valerie for a bit. I'll be back later. When the door closed, Marcella remained seated, her nails drumming lightly on the glass table. She picked up her phone and dialed a familiar number. He's back, she said curtly. The man's voice on the other end was deep and raspy. I assume he doesn't know anything yet? Not yet. But soon. She ended the call, her eyes fixed on the family photo on the wall, where Sarah smiled sweetly between Richard and Sophia. "You won't be here much longer, little angel," she murmured. "Did that just send chills down your spine?" Let me know in the comments what you think Marcella is planning. That afternoon, at Valerie Chen's law office, Richard listened as his friend spoke. Valerie was sharp and had supported him since the company's inception. "Richard, I reviewed the company bylaws. If you resign as CEO without naming a successor, temporary operational authority automatically transfers to Marcella." Richard laughed a soft but weary sound. "I trust her. She's my wife, after all." Valerie looked at him longer than necessary. "You always trust people until everything falls apart. Have you ever trusted someone completely, only to be betrayed? Share your story in the comments. You're not alone." He didn't respond, simply gripping his coffee cup tighter. His eyes drifted toward the window, where downtown Los Angeles buildings gleamed under the afternoon sun. He didn't know that across the city, Marcella sat in a dimly lit bar in West Hollywood, facing a man with eyes like a viper, Commander Beltran of the LAPD. She leaned in, her voice barely audible above the music and clinking glasses. "Did you receive the files I sent?" Beltran nodded, pulling a USB drive from his jacket pocket. "Enough to dismantle his reputation. I just need you to handle the rest." "His home surveillance system? Done. I'll reset everything tonight." He paused. "I want to make sure that when the incident occurs, all evidence points directly to Sophia. The girl is 8 years old, Marcella. How far are you willing to go?" "As far as necessary, so I never have to see her face again," she replied, her lips curling slightly. Beltran chuckled, raising his glass of whiskey. "And what do I get out of this little game?" Marcella placed her hand over his, her red nails lightly grazing his skin. "I think you know. Can you believe what you're hearing? If this story is gripping you, don't forget to subscribe. We share powerful stories like this every week." That night, Richard returned late. Sophia was asleep, her forehead warm. He searched for a cloth and gently applied a cold compress. Marcella appeared in the doorway, arms crossed. "She's having another allergic reaction. I told her not to go into the garden, but she never listens." Richard gently adjusted the blanket over his daughter. "I'll take her to the doctor in the morning. Don't worry." She remained silent for a moment, then turned and left. When the bedroom door clicked shut, Richard softly kissed his daughter's forehead, whispering, "Sleep well, angel." Downstairs, Marcella sat before her laptop, her eyes illuminated by the screen. She connected the USB drive Beltran had given her. The screen displayed the words, "Connection established with LAPD internal network." She opened every surveillance frame inside the mansion, from the living room and hallway to Sophia's bedroom. For a few seconds, her gaze lingered on the image of father and daughter embracing. Her lips tightened, and she quickly closed that window. Who do you think is more dangerous, Marcella or Beltran? Share your thoughts below. The sky over Beverly Hills that morning was exceptionally clear. Sunlight spread evenly across the luxury homes, and flower beds in the front garden released a soft fragrance with the breeze. Birds sang, and the distant sound of traffic created a sense of perfect tranquility, so perfect that no one could have predicted the chaos that would erupt just hours later. Richard left early, dressed in his cream suit. He fastened his tie while kissing his daughter's forehead. "I'll be back soon, okay? Stay with Mrs. Lopez." Sophia smiled, her hand holding a paintbrush still sticky with paint. "I'll paint more sunflowers. Make sure you see them when you get back." Richard nodded and closed the door. Inside, Marcella poured coffee quietly, her eyes watching through the window as Sophia played in the garden. The wind blew through white curtains, carrying the scent of yellow pollen, something the girl loved but Marcella loathed. Mrs. Lopez accompanied Sophia into the garden. She trimmed the grass while the girl arranged fresh flower stems in a crystal vase. "Look, Mrs. Lopez. They're all blooming." The girl giggled happily. "I think my mom Sarah would have loved these flowers." Mrs. Lopez paused for a second. "Yes, that's right. Your mother used to plant an entire garden like this." A brief moment of silence passed. And then Sophia smiled again, continuing to arrange the flowers. But just as the sun began to decline, the deep rumble of an engine sounded from the driveway. A black and white LAPD patrol car stopped at the gate. 2 men stepped out. Beltran walked slowly, his gaze penetrating, a subtle smirk playing on his lips, like someone who already had his target secured. Beside him was Emilio Torres, a young rookie on his first assignment. He looked awkward, clutching his notepad, glancing around the quiet neighborhood with a puzzled expression. Beltran knocked firmly on the iron gate, his voice harsh. "We've received an urgent inspection order. There are reports of a child in this area suspected of having a serious skin condition. We need to verify." Mrs. Lopez came out, her face full of suspicion. "A condition? There's no such thing here. Who filed such a ridiculous report?" But before she could say more, Marcella appeared behind her, feigning an exaggerated look of panic. "I called. The girl has strange marks on her wrist, and I was very worried. My husband isn't here, and I just wanted to make sure." Mrs. Lopez turned, stunned. "What are you talking about? It's just an allergy." Marcella grabbed the housekeeper's arm, squeezing gently, whispering just loud enough for Beltran to hear. "I'm doing this to protect her. Understand?" Beltran immediately pushed the gate open and entered, his eyes passing over Sophia. The girl stood in the middle of the flower garden, still holding the crystal vase, her face confused. "Emilio," Beltran muttered. Emilio followed, his voice low. "Sir, it might just be a minor rash." Beltran glared at him, signaling him to stay quiet. "Just follow protocol." He advanced quickly toward the girl. "What's your name? Where are your parents?" Sophia stepped back, her voice trembling. "My daddy's at work. I didn't do anything wrong. Extend your hand." Beltran grabbed her small wrist and placed restraints on it. The cold metallic sound echoed through the sun-drenched garden. "Ow, that hurts!" Sophia cried out as a parent. Could you imagine this happening to your child? If this scene broke your heart, leave a comment. I'm reading every single one. Mrs. Lopez rushed forward, grabbing Beltran's arm. "Are you insane? She's only 8 years old." Marcella pulled the housekeeper back, feigning concern. "Don't make things worse. Let them do their job. I just want to make sure she doesn't spread anything to anyone else." "Spread something?" Mrs. Lopez shouted. "Have you lost your mind, Marcella?" The screams caused some neighbors to peer out. Mr. Betancourt, who lived across the street, quickly grabbed his video camera. He was an amateur videographer who loved documenting strange occurrences in the neighborhood. He raised the lens, capturing the moment when Beltran led the small pale girl. Her eyes filled with tears. Beltran tightened the restraints, announcing loudly enough for all to hear, "We are executing a medical inspection order as required. Anyone who interferes will be sanctioned." Marcella stepped back, hugging herself as if she were the one concerned for the girl. "I just hope this doesn't go too far," she said softly, but her lips curved subtly upward. Emilio leaned in, clearly seeing the red rash on the girl's wrist. "Sir, it is indeed an allergy. I can confirm it." Beltran didn't listen. He pulled the girl along. Mrs. Lopez tried to intervene, but Marcella stepped in front, clutching her chest, her eyes tearful with feigned worry. "Please don't. I'm just scared for everyone." At that moment, an engine roared in the distance. Richard's car swerved sharply onto the street, braking hard in front of the gate. He jumped out, leaving the door open, and headed straight for the garden. "Sophia!" His voice was hoarse. He saw his daughter being led away, a red mark visible on her wrist. "Let her go," Richard shouted, running toward them and pulling Beltran's arm. The restraints snapped open, falling to the pavement. He embraced his daughter, trembling. Beltran stepped back, pulling out his badge. "You're obstructing an officer in the performance of his duties, Mr. Whitmore." Richard ignored him, focusing only on consoling his sobbing daughter. "It's okay. Daddy's here. Daddy's right here." He looked up, seeing Marcella standing a few steps away, hands clasped, her eyes cold and steady.
There was no confusion, only an eerie serenity.
"Don't misunderstand me," she said lightly.
I was just worried about her. I never thought things would escalate like this.
"Would you have believed your spouse if they said this to you? Let me know what you would do in Richard's position." Richard clenched his jaw.
Worried? By calling the police to detain my daughter?
No one answered. The silence was broken by the sound of a phone ringing in Beltran's pocket. He pulled it out, looked at the screen, and said briefly, "Understood. Job done." Then he turned and left.
As the patrol car drove away from the gate, Richard carried Sophia inside. Mrs. Lopez followed.
Tears rolling down her face, Marcella stood still, her lips slightly curved, her eyes following father and daughter like someone who had just completed a performance. Richard placed his daughter on her bed and immediately called his private physician.
The diagnosis was just a mild allergy, nothing serious.
Sophia was asleep, but tear stains still marked her cheeks. He sat beside her, gently stroking her hair.
Downstairs,
Marcella entered her study, closed the door, and picked up the phone.
"The video has gone viral," she said softly,
looking out the window where Richard held his daughter.
"Everything is going exactly according to plan."
The man's voice on the other end replied, deep and brief.
"Good. I'm meeting with the Crow people tonight." Across the city at the station, Emilio sat in front of his body camera screen.
He rewound the footage.
Everything was crystal clear. Marcella pointing to Beltran, urging him to act. Emilio frowned, his heart pounding.
He copied the original video file to a USB drive and tucked it into his jacket pocket. A heavy feeling settled in his chest. He knew he had just touched something he shouldn't have. Emilio is risking everything for the truth.
If you admire his courage, show some love by hitting that like button. That night, Richard sat in the living room with Sophia asleep in his arms.
He opened his laptop and went online. The first headline hit him hard.
Tycoon Richard Whitmore loses control and assaults police officer in his own garden.
Below was an edited video footage of him grabbing Beltran's arm, Sophia screaming,
and a constant voiceover describing him as an abuser. Richard slammed the laptop shut, his breathing ragged. He looked up.
A small red light blinked in the corner of the room, the security camera indicator. He stood, approaching it. The red light blinked steadily, unwaveringly.
Richard squinted, staring directly at the lens as if looking at the person watching him.
His hand tightened, his knuckles turning white. The mansion was wrapped in silence.
Before we continue, please take a moment to leave a comment about this story and rate it from 1 to 10. How are you feeling? If there's anything you'd like to share, I'm always here to listen. I hope you find a moment of peace and reflection as you follow this healing story
and its journey of courage and justice. The dim desk lamp illuminated Richard Whitmore's tense face. He hadn't slept all night. On the screen, the security camera system showed empty. Flickering frames, many sections clumsily spliced together.
When he dug deeper into the files,
the access logs were clearly visible. Marcella Whitmore's internal account. Richard sat motionless, his hand gripping the mouse.
A dry click sounded as he shut off the screen. Then, in his mind, all the pieces began to fall into place.
The video.
The police, Marcella's satisfied look.
A cold shiver ran down his spine. Richard pulled out his phone,
opened his contacts, and found Leo Solis,
the security engineer who had been his right hand while running Whitmore Technologies.
"Leo, I need you to check my home system.
There are signs of internal penetration."
"As fast as you can,"
Leo responded concisely. "Send me the logs. If what you're saying is true, only someone with LAPD authorization could connect to that server." Half an hour later, the results arrived.
The system had been compromised from inside the mansion, transmitting data to a server belonging to the city's internal network. Richard stared at the words, feeling a crushing sensation in his chest.
He knew exactly what this meant. Marcella was in collusion with someone inside the police apparatus. Footsteps sounded behind him.
Marcella appeared in the doorway, a silk robe loosely draped, her hair naturally tousled as if she'd just awakened.
Still haven't slept? Richard closed his laptop, his voice calm.
I was reviewing the surveillance footage.
My God, Richard, she laughed softly, pouring herself a glass of water.
You're losing sleep over a silly video? I thought you were better at keeping calm. Richard just looked at her, offering no response. There was something cold and deep in his eyes that made Marcella hesitate slightly. Breakfast passed in silence.
Sophia was awake, still weak from the allergy attack. She looked at him, her voice small. Daddy, they said you're a bad person. Is it true?
Richard froze, his hand holding the spoon rigid. He leaned down and hugged her, forcing a smile. It's okay, sweetheart. They just don't understand. Mrs. Lopez stood nearby, gently placing a hand on his shoulder. Mr. Whitmore, be careful with her. I feel like something bad is happening. He looked up, meeting her anxious gaze. Her words, for the first time, weren't the paranoia of an old housekeeper but a genuine warning signal. At the same time, inside City Hall, Beltran sat before Mayor Jimenez's dark wooden desk. The room was saturated with cigarette smoke.
The video is spreading rapidly, but it's not enough, Jimenez said, his voice hoarse.
I want his reputation completely ruined. We need more evidence he's losing control, a danger to the community. Only then will my project get approved.
Beltran smiled smugly. Understood. I'll create a second incident today.
I'll make sure no one stays on his side.
Jimenez narrowed his eyes, his voice icy. Don't fail, Beltran.
Whitmore used to be an untouchable symbol.
To bring him down, you have to make people believe he's tainted. When Beltran left, he didn't notice the mayor's assistant's gaze following him. Someone who had silently recorded the conversation on her personal phone. At the local station,
Rookie Emilio Torres was called to the commander's office.
Sitting at the desk was Captain Vega, Beltran's direct superior.
You filmed the incident in Beverly Hills?
Yes, sir. I was just following protocol, sir. Vega slammed a file against the desk.
Turn in all your equipment.
Don't mention that incident again.
That's an order.
Emilio swallowed hard.
But sir, my video is different from what was published. It shows. Want to lose your badge, Torres?
Vega interrupted, his voice sharp as a blade. Then I said, that case is closed. Leaving the office, Emilio stood for a moment in the empty hallway, his mind spinning. He understood this wasn't just a mistake. It was an entire network.
And he was right in the middle, when you realize corruption goes deeper than you thought.
If you're invested in this story, make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss what happens next. That afternoon, the Whitmore mansion was brightly lit. Marcella organized a small tea party, actually a gathering with her wealthy friends, including Claudia Reyes, a famous PR specialist. Claudia swirled her champagne glass, offering a slight smile.
You know, the media is buzzing ferociously. But if you want to ensure he never recovers, let me handle it.
Leak the story that Richard Whitmore is suffering a mental breakdown due to work stress. The public loves a tragedy, Marcella.
They'll condemn him themselves.
Marcella beamed. That's a brilliant idea. She raised her glass, clinking it softly against Claudia's. It's time everyone sees that I'm the victim here. Can you believe the level of manipulation here?
Comment below if you've ever known someone who played the victim like this. Late afternoon, Richard met with Valerie at her law office.
She listened to his account, her expression becoming serious.
Richard, if what you're saying is true, this is no longer a personal matter. Jimenez might be manipulating the entire police department to take you out of the game. Remember the city healthcare project you refused to sign with him?
Richard nodded slowly, his eyes heavy.
I think Marcella has become his tool. Or she volunteered. Valerie leaned toward him. If so, you need evidence.
Don't act rashly.
I'll contact some people I trust.
When Richard left the office, Valerie's phone rang.
A deep, urgent male voice spoke. I'm Torres. I have something Mr. Whitmore needs to see. But I can't talk over the phone. Valerie responded briefly.
Give me the location. Underground parking.
Level 3, 9 p.m. Come alone.
Night fell. While Richard was still busy reviewing the system, Marcella left the mansion. She arrived at a deserted parking lot in the industrial zone, where Beltran waited in a dark sedan. The car door opened, and she slid in. The smell of cigarette smoke mixed with perfume filled the cabin. Beltran wrapped an arm around her neck, pulling her close. "We're making good progress, you know, Marcella?" Marcella smiled, her lips brushing his ear. "As long as he falls, I'll have everything, the company, the assets, the name. And you'll get your share." Beltran kissed her, then leaned back, his gaze cold as steel.
"If he discovers what we did, I'm not sure I can protect you."
Marcella stroked his chest, her voice soft but sharp. "You're protecting yourself, Beltran."
In his study, Richard sat before the screen, his eyes fixed on the network signal graph. A mysterious data transmission was being broadcast, not through the mansion's security channel, but through a different IP address. He traced it. Line after line of code appeared, and the destination address sent a chill through him. The local station's server. He jumped up, grabbing his jacket. Outside, thunder rumbled, and rain began to fall. Mrs. Lopez emerged from the kitchen, intending to ask where he was going. But Richard simply said, "I need to confirm something.
Watch the girl for me."
He rushed to his car. The engine roared, tires crunching on wet gravel.
Wind and rain lashed the windshield, but he didn't slow down. The city lights faded behind him.
In the rearview mirror, another set of headlights appeared, approaching. Richard glanced back, a sense of unease rising. He swerved sharply onto a quiet street, but the lights followed. The rain intensified. When he stopped at the concrete building of the station, the headlights reflected brilliantly on the wet pavement, illuminating the courtyard. Richard turned off the engine, opened the door, and stepped out into the rain. The sound of a lighter clicking echoed across the street. Under the dim yellow light, Beltran leaned against a car, a cigarette glowing red between his fingers. He took a long drag, flicked the butt into a puddle, and his hoarse voice cut through the rain.
"You got here faster than I thought."
Whitmore. The night rain pounded the West Los Angeles police station, each drop hitting the pavement and reflecting the flickering streetlights like broken silver streaks.
Richard parked in front of the station steps, the building's windows shut tight. Pale light glowing behind the curtain of water. He opened the door and stepped out.
His coat soaked, his breath heavy in the cold air. Across the street, Commander Beltran leaned against a car hood, cigarette in hand, smoke dissolving in the rain.
He wasn't surprised. He seemed to have been waiting. "I figured you'd come looking for me, Whitmore." He smiled smugly.
"A guy like you can't stand losing face." Richard stood tall, his voice low but firm. "I just want to review the original video footage."
"You know it was manipulated." Beltran shrugged, squinting through the rain. "Everything followed protocol. Your wife confirmed the child had unusual symptoms.
We were just doing our duty."
"You detained an 8-year-old without a warrant, without a doctor, and then let the press publish fake footage."
"Is that your duty?"
Beltran exhaled smoke, a crooked smile on his face.
"You should be careful what you say. Here, there's no fake or real, only what the public believes."
They stared at each other through the downpour. Two men, one with hidden power, the other being gradually pushed to the edge. The tension was palpable, broken only by thunder tearing through the sky. In the surveillance room, Emilio Torres sat before the security screen, eyes glued to the image of the two men confronting each other in the courtyard. He bit his lip. God, he's going to eliminate him without hesitation. Emilio opened the data port and began backing up the entire server disk where the original video clips were stored before being deleted. He knew clearly that once Vega and Beltran found out, his career would be over. But his conscience was louder than his fear.
Sweat mixed with rain fell onto the keyboard.
Data lines raced across the screen. In an upstairs office, Captain Vega was on the phone, his voice low but clear. "Everything's under control, Mr. Jimenez." On the other end, Mayor Jimenez's voice was cold.
"Good, but I don't need Whitmore back in the game.
I need a scapegoat."
When the public believes he's a dangerous threat, the healthcare contract will pass.
Understand?
Crystal clear, sir.
Viga hung up, looking down at the courtyard through the fogged glass, seeing the silhouettes of the two men under the torrential rain. This is about to conclude, he murmured. Richard was escorted out of the facility by security, citing closing hours. He didn't resist, just looked back at the building one last time. Rainwater streamed down the car window as he got in and turned on the heat. Above the sound of the wind, his phone vibrated an anonymous text message. If you want the truth, come to the Cloverleaf Bridge at 2 a.m. Someone's waiting for you. He read the message repeatedly, his gaze fixed on the last words. Someone's waiting for you. An intuitive feeling made him turn the wheel, driving toward the thick, rainy night. Across the city, in an elegant restaurant on Sunset Boulevard, Marcella sat before Mayor Jimenez and Claudia, the media specialist. The air was thick with perfume and expensive wine. I just wanted to protect the child, Marcella said, her voice trembling just enough to sound credible. Richard changed after Sarah passed. He lost control, always yelling, destroying things. Jimenez nodded, his eyes cold. You did the right thing. But someone like Whitmore shouldn't be celebrated anymore. Claudia smiled, interjecting. I'll handle the media angle. We'll evoke sympathy for you, the distressed wife. And Whitmore becomes the symbol of a man dehumanized by money. Marcella raised her glass, clinking it softly with theirs. I just need him out of my life. Near 2 a.m., the Cloverleaf Bridge was shrouded in fog and dim yellow lights. Rain fell steadily, the wind biting cold. Richard stopped his car under the bridge. Seeing Emilio Torres huddled by a pillar, his raincoat soaked. Holding a USB drive. Richard approached, looking directly at him. You sent me the message? Emilio nodded. I don't have much time. This is the original body camera footage from that day. You need to see it. Richard took it, looking at the young man for a moment. You know this will cost you your badge. Emilio responded, his voice trembling but firm. I'd rather lose my job than my conscience. I saw what they did to your daughter. And Marcella, she signaled him. Richard gripped a USB drive, inhaling deeply. In the dim light, his face looked exhausted but fiercely determined. He nodded. Thank you. You're not alone in this. Emilio stepped back, glancing around. Be careful, Mr. Whitmore. They're following you. This is the moment everything changes. If you're on the edge of your seat right now, let me know with in the comments. In the bridge structure. A few dozen meters away, a figure hid behind the railing, a long camera lens pointed down, capturing the moment of the exchange. That man was Javier Solis, an independent reporter whose contract was canceled by Jimenez for daring to investigate the city's healthcare fund background. He clicked continuously, each photograph vivid evidence. A feeling washed over him that he'd just discovered the real bombshell. The next morning, the media had invaded the streets. On TV screens, social media, and phones, there was only one clip. Richard Whitmore slamming his hand on a table, yelling in front of his little daughter. Tycoon loses control, child cries for help, the dangerous father in the heart of Beverly Hills. Headlines flashed one after another. Crowds stood outside the mansion, chanting, throwing wilted flowers and trash. Someone had even spray-painted the word monster on the gate. Marcella stood in the garden, her face lightly made up, her eyes perfectly moistened with tears. She allowed close-ups from reporters, her voice choked. Richard. He's not the man I knew. After Sarah's passing, he became unstable. I'm just so worried about the child. A reporter extended a microphone. Do you fear he might harm your daughter? Marcella lowered her head, her lips trembling slightly. I just hope he gets the help he needs. That scene aired live on Jimenez's news channel. In the studio, the mayor watched with a half-smile on his face. Promote this story on every platform for the next hour. The public will do the rest. Inside the mansion, Richard had drawn the curtains. The noise outside roared like a storm. Sophia was curled in his arms, sobbing. Daddy, they hate me. Richard held her tight, his voice hoarse. No, sweetheart. They're just being deceived. In the corner of the room, Mrs. Lopez sat on the floor holding her head. In the corner of the room. Mrs. Lopez sat on the floor, holding her head. She chased away countless people who climbed the gate, filming and taking pictures. "My God, they're like wild animals," she whispered. The phone rang incessantly. It was Valerie. "Richard, I'm working with the legal team. They can file a media restraining order, but it'll take time." "There's no time left," he replied. "They're coming for me." At the station, Beltran received a call from Viga. "Jimenez wants this concluded today. Keep Whitmore locked in the house. Let him explode. We need a scene of a madman resisting law enforcement." Beltran smiled smugly. "I'll handle it." At the same time, Viga received a thick envelope filled with fabricated documents about the charity foundation Richard had established. "The press will call this charity money laundering. He won't recover." Emilio Torres was called to the command office. When he left, his badge was stripped. He collected his personal belongings, leaving the station in silence. But in his jacket pocket, another copy of the USB drive remained intact. He stopped in a small alley, sending a text to Valerie. "Protect the child. If I lose contact, find Javier Solis." In a small downtown office, Javier Solis, the independent reporter, opened his laptop. On screen was the video he'd captured the previous night at the Cloverleaf Bridge, Marcella and Beltran kissing, exchanging an envelope. He looked up, his eyes gleaming. "This story is going to save one person and bury an entire system today." His phone vibrated. It was Valerie. "I received a message from Torres. Do you have the video?" Javier nodded, though she couldn't see him. "Yes, and I'm ready." Valerie responded briefly. "Meet me at Blue Room Cafe at 3:00. We'll launch it through an independent channel." Meanwhile, in the mansion, Richard opened the safe in Marcella's bedroom. After several attempts, the lock clicked. Inside were stacks of papers, a temporary operational authorization in case Richard Whitmore is investigated, along with emails exchanged with Jimenez. He flipped through more pages, a contract promising to transfer total control of Whitmore technologies to Marcella to ensure public stability. She'd been planning this for a long time. Step by step, Richard clutched the papers, his knuckles white. The doorbell rang then. He quickly hid the documents in his jacket pocket and rushed downstairs. Outside, the crowd hadn't dispersed. Media shouted, "Mr. Whitmore, do you have something to say? Are you assaulting your daughter?" But he remained silent. That silence, through the reporter's lenses, seemed like a confession. In a small cafe near downtown, Valerie sat with Javier and Emilio. They spread their laptops, USB drives, and recordings across the table. "We have enough to turn everything around," Javier said. "But if we launch at the wrong time, Jimenez will suppress it immediately." Valerie contemplated. "The Internal Affairs Committee meets tomorrow morning. We'll send it directly to them while simultaneously broadcasting the video on your independent channel. If it spreads fast enough, they won't have time to suppress it." Emilio nodded. "Once the public sees Marcella signaling Beltran, everything collapses." They didn't know that across the street, a dark car was parked silently. One of Jimenez's security team members was watching, recording footage of all three. In the late afternoon, Marcella arrived at City Hall. Jimenez sat in his leather chair, unbuttoning his vest, looking at her with a half-threatening gaze. "We should stop," Marcella said, her voice low. "Richard isn't easy to defeat. I think he's starting to suspect things." Jimenez leaned back. "There's no turning back. If he survives, I lose everything." "It's too late for you to change sides, Marcella." She remained silent, but her hands were tightly clasped in her lap. Jimenez's gaze passed over her, full of insinuation. "Play your part well. Once this is over, I'll give you what you deserve." That night, Richard gathered some essentials and put a heavy coat on Sophia. The girl was still scared, her eyes red and swollen. "Where are we going, Gaddy?" "To a safe place," he said, gently pulling her toward the door. The air outside the gate was freezing. Just as he stepped out, Blue lights flashed. 3 patrol cars blocked the street. Beltran was the first to exit, holding papers. Search warrant, Mr. Whitmore.
Richard stood in front of his daughter.
On what basis?
Beltran smiled. Reports indicate you're storing charity money laundering documents inside the house. We're just doing our job.
He didn't respond, just tightened his grip on his daughter, his eyes like steel. Beltran signaled his men. Flashlights swept every room, the sound of boots on the floor, cabinet doors slamming open. In the study, an officer shouted, "Commander, we found this!"
Beltran approached, picking up a thick envelope. The fabricated documents had been discovered accidentally in a cabinet drawer. He looked up, his eyes cold with triumph.
Well, looks like we came to the right place. Richard stood in the living room in silence, sweat and rain mixing on his neck. In his jacket pocket, the small USB drive sat motionless, the only thing that could save him. Outside, camera flashes exploded relentlessly, shouts, clicks, and wailing sirens intertwined.
A perfectly choreographed public spectacle.
Down to the second. Richard looked at Beltran, his eyes disturbingly calm. "Now I hope you'll cooperate and come with us to the station," Beltran said, looking directly at Richard with provocative intent. They quickly escorted Richard toward the station. The metal door slammed shut as Richard was pushed into the interrogation room. 4 gray walls and intense, white light shining on his face. The restraints still marked his wrists.
Outside, the sounds of cameras clicking and reporters shouting reached
him as if the entire world was waiting for a guilty man to break. Beltran leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed, a smug smile playing on his lips. "Not bad, Whitmore. You finally landed exactly where you belong." Richard looked up, his voice deep and rough. "You have no idea what you just ignited." Beltran laughed, taking the last drag of his cigarette and stubbing it out on the steel table. "I know exactly. And I also know you have zero proof." The door opened. Viga entered, placed a file down, and signed the temporary detention papers.
Charges: child abuse and obstruction of public duties.
"Perfect," Beltran murmured. "Right on time." Viga's eyes swept over Richard, cold as stone. "From now on, he's our problem."
Richard offered no resistance.
He simply sat there, staring at the two-way mirror in front of him.
Where he knew someone was watching. Inside him, everything quieted. No fear, no anger. Just a single thought. He had to survive so his daughter would know the truth. In a temporarily rented office across the city, Valerie spread a city map across the table. Beside her were Emilio, Javier, and Mrs. Lopez, the elderly housekeeper whose hands still trembled as she pulled an old notebook from her purse.
"I got this from her bedroom," Mrs. Lopez said, her voice hoarse. Mrs. Marcella wrote every meeting with Jimenez dates, even account numbers.
Javier opened his laptop, rewinding video clips.
The image of Marcella handing an envelope to Beltran was clear. He looked up, his eyes gleaming. "Valerie, we have everything." Valerie nodded, her voice firm. "Listen. Javier, you handle launching the video exactly when the city council meeting starts tomorrow morning.
Emilio, send all the original evidence to the FBI through an internal channel. Mrs. Lopez,
keep this notebook, bring it to me at the signal. We only have one chance." The police station remained brightly lit. Marcella arrived, dressed in a long coat, her face pale with artificial exhaustion.
Reporters surrounded her.
"I just want to visit him for the child. Sophia can't live without her father." Cameras flashed relentlessly, capturing the moment when the wife cried for her mentally unstable husband. But when the interrogation room door closed, the smile on her face faded. The mask is finally slipping. "If you're here for justice being served, drop A in the comments." She leaned in, whispering to Beltran waiting in the hallway.
"Delete every remaining copy from the system.
It has to be clean tonight. I can't risk any mistakes." Beltran nodded, his voice low. "I'll handle it." Viga's preparing the rest.
Upstairs, Viga had just finished a call with Jimenez.
"Everything's on track, sir.
Whitmore will be transferred tonight. No fuss."
Jimenez responded coldly. "Good. I don't need a body.
just a story. In the detention area, Richard sat alone. The light flickered. From the distance came the sound of a door opening and firm footsteps. 2 officers approached, one lowering his voice. "Transfer order to secure unit, Mr. Whitmore. Stand up." He stood. His gaze oddly calm. As they walked down the hallway, a soft voice crackled on the radio attached to the lead officer's shoulder. Viga's voice. "Take him to the isolation unit downstairs. Finish quickly." The other officer nodded. Richard understood everything. He clenched his fist. Tonight, they intended to end things. In a nearby office, Emilio was packing his personal belongings to leave when he heard the radio signal and conversation. His heart pounded. He removed his headset, pulled out his phone, and called Valerie. "They're going to silence him tonight." On the other end, Valerie's voice was icy. "Stay on the line. I'm on my way." 10 minutes later, Valerie and Javier appeared at the station gate, dressed in suits with legal representative badges. "I'm Richard Whitmore's attorney. I need to see my client immediately," she said, voice firm. The gate guard hesitated. Javier intervened, holding a briefcase. "She has a court order. Are you going to obstruct justice?" While the guard verified, Valeria quickly glanced down the hallway. An officer passed Viga. She offered a polite smile, approached, and subtly installed a small device under his desk. The recording device flashed a small green light, beginning to capture every word. In the basement, Richard heard the bolt slide. Someone entered. Emilio, his face drenched in sweat, his eyes tense. "Come with me. Right now." "What are you doing here?" "There's no time. If you stay, they're going to eliminate you." Richard stood, following him through a service hallway. They crossed evidence storage rooms where the smell of dampness mixed with the sound of rain pounding the corrugated roof. The final emergency exit door opened, and cold wind slapped their faces. From afar, an alarm sounded. Viga's voice roared over the radio. "Someone's getting him out! Block the back gate." Richard and Emilio ran, headlights from the back courtyard sweeping the area, blinding them. A single loud projectile shot rang out. The bullet grazed the concrete wall, flying sparks. They hid behind a truck, breathing ragged, hearts hammering. Emilio pulled the USB drive from his jacket, pushing it into Richard's hand. "Take this to Valerie. She knows what to do." "I'll distract them." "No, come with me." Emilio shook his head. "No one else can stop them. Go." Rapid footsteps approached. "Go!" Red patrol lights swept the courtyard. Emilio turned, pulling out a compact deterrent device, jumping from cover and sending a warning shock to draw attention. "Catch him!" Viga's voice roared. Richard turned, seeing the young man standing in the rain. Lights reflecting on his pale face, his hand still holding the device. Trembling. Another loud blast echoed. Emilio stumbled and collapsed face first into a puddle. Rain fell, mixing with a crimson stain widening on the cement. Richard froze, his fingers gripping the USB drive tightly. His eyes blurred. Sirens wailed through the neighborhood, red and blue lights flashing through the dark night. He turned, running toward the darkness, carrying the only evidence and the blood debt he'd just incurred. Behind him, Viga approached Emilio's body, kicking the device from his hand, a slight sneer on his face. "He chose the wrong side." The rain continued falling, a relentless lament for the one who fell for justice, and somewhere in the city, Valerie looked at her watch, whispering, "Richard, you have to get here before they erase everything." The rain had ceased, but the streets were still flooded with water, reflecting the dim streetlights like broken silver streaks. Richard's car accelerated through the night, tires screeching on wet asphalt. His jacket was still stained with Emilio's blood, darkening under the dashboard light. When he stopped in front of Valerie's house, he almost collapsed. The door burst open, and Valerie rushed to support him. "Richard, are you okay?" "My God, are you hurt?" "No, but he's gone." His voice was rough. He pulled the USB drive from his pocket, his hand trembling. "Emilio died to give me this." Valerie grabbed it,
immediately connecting it to her computer.
The screen lit up, displaying folders, original video, audio, internal documents. She opened the first file.
The frame clearly showed Marcella signaling Beltran, her cold voice resonating. "Restrain her. Don't let anyone film from this angle."
Next, an audio clip, Jimenez's voice. "When he falls, she signs and you get your cut."
"Don't worry, I'll handle it." No one said another word.
The room was silent, broken only by the soft sound of rain on the roof. Javier,
sitting in the corner, pulled out his phone and recorded the screen.
"Today we have proof not just against Jimenez, but also Vega and Marcella."
Valerie quickly called an old colleague, Diana Guzman,
a reporter who'd been banned from television by Jimenez for investigating his healthcare fund background.
"Diana, this is the biggest story of the year. I have all the proof of Jimenez's police manipulation network.
I need airtime leave during prime time."
Diana hesitated.
"If you really have it, I'll open the broadcast."
"But Javier, you know they'll come for you, right?" Javier let out a weak laugh. "I know. And I'm ready for them."
True courage means standing up even when you know the cost.
If Javier's bravery inspires you, hit that subscribe button to support stories of real heroes across the city. Marcella received a text message. Whitmore escaped. She panicked, calling Beltran repeatedly, but the phone just rang endlessly. "Answer!" she screamed, her voice breaking.
But the line remained silent. Marcella looked around the empty mansion, a chill running down her spine. Everything was starting to slip through her fingers. Karma is finally catching up. Are you satisfied with how this is unfolding?
Let me know your thoughts below. On the table.
The TV screen showed a news segment. LAPD denies evidence manipulation allegations.
The image showed Beltran smiling before the camera, claiming Richard Whitmore is a dangerous individual with psychological problems. She bit her lip, calling Vega, but he didn't answer either.
When she texted, begging for help, Vega responded with a single line. "Stay quiet. Everything's being handled."
Meanwhile, Sophia was sleeping at Mrs. Lopez's niece's house, nearly 30 miles from Los Angeles. It was a small wooden house nestled on a hillside. Mrs. Lopez sat beside her, mending the little girl's jacket. "Grandma," Sophia asked softly, "that good officer saved my daddy?" Mrs. Lopez stopped sewing, looking at the girl, her eyes reddened. "Yes, sweetheart. He was very brave." She lowered her head, hiding the truth that the young man had fallen for the girl's father's sake. Some heroes never get to see the impact they made. If Emilio's sacrifice moved you, take a moment to leave a comment in his honor. At City Hall, Jimenez slammed a file against his desk. He escaped. His advisors remained silent. A PR person stammered, "Sir, we're controlling the media narrative,
but there are rumors the FBI is starting to review the case."
Jimenez roared, "Create a new scandal."
"Anything. I want the public to forget about Whitmore."
In the corner of the room, Maya Lee, the youngest member of the PR staff, bowed her head silently. When everyone left, she pulled out her phone, opened the recording app, the complete transcript of the conversation, and sent it to an anonymous email address, Javier Solis. Valerie worked tirelessly, compiling all the evidence, making multiple copies. "Richard, one copy is prepared for the FBI, one for the Internal Affairs Committee, and the final copy for public broadcast. We have a few hours before they clean house," she said. "Vega won't stay quiet." Richard nodded, his eyes no longer tired but resolved. "They eliminated someone. I won't let him die in vain." Javier looked up. "Diana's almost ready to broadcast, but we have to reach the National Broadcast Center tonight." In the suburbs, Beltran sat in a deteriorated rental house, his hand trembling as he turned on the TV. The news segment showed his image with the headline, "West LA police official accused of evidence falsification." "It can't be," he stammered. Grabbing his phone to call Vega, no response. A window rattled with the wind. He jumped, pulling out his deterrent device and rushing outside. But there was only darkness and rain puddles in the courtyard. He returned inside, trying to call Marcella,
but she didn't answer. Instead, the screen showed a single message. Save yourself.
We never met. He stared at the words, then threw the phone against the wall. It shattered. Everything was falling apart.
The people who were once his allies had turned their backs. And he, the one who thought he controlled everything, was now the hunted. What's your take on this unfolding drama? Are you rooting for Richard to expose the truth?
Drop your thoughts in the comments below. I'd love to hear which moment has gripped you the most so far.
That night, Javier sat before his computer, pressing his life's test button.
A brief audio clip played. Jimenez's voice, clear. When he falls, she signs, and you get your cut.
Don't worry, I'll handle it.
In less than 10 minutes, the excerpt spread across social media.
The hashtag justice for Sophia appeared, spreading like wildfire.
Thousands of comments poured in. Who's the real monster? Investigate Jimenez.
Valerie watched the trend skyrocket, her heart pounding hard.
It's time. Let's move. She, Richard, and Javier gathered the documents and left the office.
Outside, the Los Angeles night was thick.
A dark, unmarked van turned on its lights and began following them. Javier glanced in the rearview mirror, his voice low. We've been found. Richard remained calm. Keep going.
Don't stop.
Their car accelerated toward the freeway, wind howling fiercely.
The night broken only by headlights cutting through fog. From behind, the van accelerated.
Javier pressed the gas pedal, but the road narrowed, 2 lanes running parallel.
Tires screeched, the speedometer exceeding 100 miles per hour.
They're closing in. Valerie shouted. Hold on.
Javier gripped the wheel. The van from behind surged forward, ramming the side of their car.
The impact made their vehicle swerve out of the lane, skidding and crashing into the steel barrier. Documents flew everywhere,
the sound of shattering glass piercing the air. The van stopped ahead.
2 armed figures stepped out, headlights projecting bright white beams onto Richard's face, coldly calm, his hand gripping the USB drive. Javier opened the door, stood up, wind and rain lashing him.
Lights reflecting on his face like cold steel. Behind him, Valerie lifted Javier tremblingly, whispering, My God. They're really here.
A loud blast echoed in the empty night air.
The round hit the car door, flying sparks like fireworks. Javier yanked the wheel. The car swayed, lost control, then slid off the road, tumbling down the embankment. The impact made everything explode. Glass shattered.
Airbags deployed. White smoke rose. Richard kicked the car door open violently, pulling Valerie from the seat. Both fell onto wet grass, breathing ragged. Javier remained in the car, blood staining his shoulder and neck, but his hand still firmly held his phone, recording everything. From above, 2 dark figures shone flashlights down, their voices cold and dry as steel.
Hand over the USB. Do that, and maybe you can leave. Richard remained silent,
his hand quietly gripping a small rock near his foot,
then hurling it forcefully in the opposite direction. The sound made the 2 figures turn.
A burst of shots erupted, tearing through the night. Valerie held her breath, signaling Javier. He felt it slightly, opening the emergency location app for the news station. A red signal was sent, their position now registered in Diana Guzman's system.
It's done, Javier breathed, his voice fragmented.
They'll be here.
Valerie opened her bag, pulling out a small round object, an emergency flare.
She opened the cap, pulled the trigger. A bright red light shot into the sky, illuminating the entire stretch of highway. In the flickering light, Richard saw clearly the faces of the 2 men, Vega's operatives. A long siren wailed in the distance. Highway patrol unit approaching. Drawn by the flare light, the 2 armed men exchanged glances, cursed and scattered.
Trying to retreat to their vehicle. Richard seized the opportunity,
pulling Valerie away from the embankment. What about Javier? She cried. She give us time, Richard responded, his voice firm. They ran through thick tree brush, their steps sinking in mud. The wind biting cold. They found an abandoned cabin, the door rotted. Distant lights still sweeping the forest patches. Richard slammed the door shut, leaning his back against the wall, both breathing heavily. Valerie looked at him, her voice trembling but resolute. What will you do when the truth comes out? Richard looked through the broken window where flashing lights sporadically gleamed. I don't need reputation. I don't need the company. I just need my daughter not to fear law enforcement every time she hears a siren. She lowered her head slightly, tears welling but refusing to fall. Emilio would be proud of you. At the same time, Javier still lay amidst the car wreckage. When highway patrol arrived, he struggled to stand, hiding his phone in his jacket pocket. Where are the others? The officer asked.
Javier groaned softly.
They ran into the woods. Please help me. They placed him on a stretcher, but he managed to send a quick text to Diana. Launch the video now. Don't wait for me. Early morning screens across America lit up with the headline, Exclusive, the truth about Richard Whitmore. The video began with Beltran restraining Sophia, Marcella signaling from behind, Jimenez accepting funds from Viga's envelope.
Javier's voice resonated over the documentary.
This is evidence from internal sources.
Justice has been sold, but the truth cannot be eliminated.
Public outrage erupted. Thousands took to the streets demanding an investigation.
The hashtag Justice for Sophia dominated every social media platform. Jimenez appeared on television, trying to force a smile during an emergency press conference.
This is a misunderstanding. I'll cooperate with authorities. But mid-conference, Diana's reporter activated a secondary screen, showing the full video. Jimenez clearly telling Beltran, when he falls, she signs, and you get your cut. I'll handle it. The audio boomed in the room, and shouts erupted.
Jimenez's face went pale. At the West LA station, Viga slammed his hand on the desk, shouting, Who leaked the files? Find Beltran immediately.
But just 10 minutes later, a young officer rushed in pale. Captain Viga, Beltran's deceased. Viga froze.
What? He was found lifeless in the bathroom. There was a note saying, I was just following orders. The atmosphere in the station was thick.
Everyone looked at each other, their eyes mixed with fear and horror. Vega took a deep, loud breath, then threw a file against the wall. Delete all contacts immediately. In the Lomas mansion, Marcella heard the news on television. Her face went white. She rushed to her room, stuffing cash and her passport into a bag. No, this can't be, she murmured. Jimenez promised me. He promised. She was talking to herself while dragging her suitcase down the stairs.
But the house was eerily quiet, no sound of people, no footsteps from Mrs. Lopez.
No laughter from Sophia. On the dining table, there was only a small envelope. Inside was a drawing from Sophia, a sunflower leaning toward the sun with childishly scrawled words, I'll find the real light. Marcella dropped the paper, tears rolling down her face. No, Sophia. In the suburbs, Valerie received a call from the FBI. We've seen the video. Richard Whitmore will be secured as a witness. Keep your location safe until our special agents arrive. How long? She asked. No more than 2 hours. Valerie looked at Richard, who sat by the cabin window, morning light illuminating his tired but serene face. She whispered, They're coming for you. Hold on.
Don't let anyone else reach you first.
He simply nodded, gently squeezing her hand in gratitude. As the sun rose, Richard drove an old car borrowed from Javier back to Beverly
Hills. The familiar road was now bathed in soft yellow
light. He stopped in front of the mansion gate, the place that had been a stage for his humiliation now held only silence. He stepped out, walking through the sunflower garden Sophia had planted. Sunlight poured over the bright yellow petals, swaying gently with the wind. Something gleamed on the ground, a broken piece of restraint. Half buried in mud. Richard crouched, picked it up, and looked at it for a long moment. You'll never have to fear again. Sophia, he whispered. In the sky, birds soared through the first rays of sun. Light shone over the garden, illuminating the father's peaceful face, but his eyes held a silent vow. How do you think Marcella should be held accountable? And what does true justice look like in a situation like this?
Share your thoughts below. This story hits differently when we discuss it together. The night wind blew through the palm trees, leaves whispering like distant murmurs. Richard pushed the iron gate and entered the mansion grounds. Once a home, now just a cold shell. Each of his steps echoed on the stone floor, mixing with the heavy smell of liquor and expensive perfume that lingered in the living room. The room light was still on. Marcella sat on the sofa, wearing a thin silk robe, her hair disheveled, eyes heavily shadowed. The liquor glass in her hand was almost empty, her fingers trembling.
"You took everything from me," she said, voice hoarse, each word coming with difficulty. Richard didn't respond. He walked toward the table, placing the USB drive on the cold, polished wooden surface.
"This is everything you and Jimenez did," he said, his voice low and calm.
"You had the chance to stop.
But you chose a different path."
Marcella looked up, her lips twisting into a distorted smile. "You think I wanted this?"
"You never understood what it felt like to live in your shadow."
"Wherever I went, people only looked at me and said, 'Richard Whitmore's wife.' I wanted my own name." Richard looked at her, his gaze both cold and sad. "Your name could have been forged if you hadn't used it for deception." She let out a hollow laugh.
"You talk as if you're innocent. But you were always perfect, disgustingly virtuous. But did you ever stop to see how small you made others feel?"
Richard was silent. The wind whistled through the doorframe, making the curtains sway. On the ceiling, light reflected on a broken glass, fragments of crystal gleaming like fractured memories.
Text message flashed on his phone. "Valerie, the FBI is on the way. Don't let her do anything reckless."
Richard looked up, but Marcella had pulled a small silver deterrent device from a drawer.
The cold steel gleamed across the room. "If I can't live in your world," she said, her hand trembling, "I'll destroy it." "I won't let you and that child live in peace."
Richard stood still, his voice low, deliberate. "Marcella, that world was never mine. It was a mask you created to hide your own fear." She shook her head, tears rolling down her face. "You talk as if you understand me completely." "I don't," he replied.
"But I understand the feeling of losing everything, including the person you love most." Her finger tightened on the trigger.
A deafening blast echoed. The bullet grazed Richard's shoulder, tearing his cream suit. Blood spread rapidly. He didn't stop. In one motion, he lunged forward, grabbing her wrist, removing the device. Both fell to the floor. The liquor glass shattered, red liquid forming a puddle on the tiles. They struggled, their breaths mixing with the crash. Marcella fought, screaming. "It should have been me. The chosen one. Not Sarah. Not your daughter." Richard held the device firmly, blood dripping from his shoulder onto his hand. He spoke softly, each word heavy. "You could have been part of my family if you'd chosen love instead of malice." Outside, sirens wailed. A helicopter swept its light over the garden. Window glass flashed red and blue through the walls. Marcella tilted her head, looking through the frame, then let out a choked, desperate laugh. "See? They're here."
"Everyone's turned their backs on me."
She released her grip. The device fell to the floor with a thud, sliding across the surface. Her entire body went limp, leaning against the chair. Richard gasped for air, sitting across from her, his shoulder still bleeding. He whispered, "Don't do anything more. Leave Sophia alone." Marcella looked at him, her eyes dull but a faint glimmer of her true self still shining, exhausted, lost at her limit. "You'll never understand me," she murmured. "I just wanted to feel like I existed." The door burst open. The FBI team rushed in, blue and red lights sweeping the floor. An officer shouted, "Drop the weapon!" "Hands up!" Marcella didn't resist. She allowed the restraints to be placed. Her eyes vacant as they looked at the ceiling. As they led her away, she looked at Richard one last time.
"If there's another life," she whispered, "don't save me."
He remained still. Only the sound of wind slipping through the door crack, carrying the smell of explosive residue. and fading perfume. The next morning's news showed footage of Jimenez being detained at City Hall. He was restrained.
Amid the jeers of reporters and citizens, major newspapers published the headline:
Mayor Jimenez accused of manipulating justice system, shadow network collapses. In Viga's office, officers found a handwritten note with a single phrase: "No one is innocent in this game." He disappeared, never seen again. Do you think Viga got what he deserved, or should he have faced trial?
Share your opinion in the comments. Richard sat again in the living room as the house slowly emptied.
All law enforcement had left, lights dimmed, leaving only shadows cast by the photograph mounted on the wall.
The old family photo. Him, Sarah and little Sophia smiling brightly. Rain outside fell softly. He approached, extending his hand to touch the glass frame, his tears mixing with rain on his blood-stained hand. He sat on the sofa, bowing his head, sighing.
The pain was silent, heavy like the night wind blowing through the slightly open door. The house, once a symbol of power,
now only echoed with the reverberations of mistakes. The door opened gently.
Richard looked up.
Sophia's small silhouette appeared in the doorway,
wearing a thick coat, clutching her old teddy bear. Her eyes reddened. Mrs. Lopez stood behind her, giving a slight nod before leaving. Sophia entered without saying anything.
Sat beside her father, resting her head on his shoulder. Richard placed his hand on her hair,
his fingers trembling.
Both were silent.
Outside, the rain still fell. In that silence, the past seemed to be closing gently, but never truly leaving. A week later, as the judge announced the start of arguments, Valerie stood, placing stacks of documents on the table.
"Your Honor, this is the complete evidence: emails, original video clips, server data, and audio recordings showing Mayor Jimenez accepted bribes from Commander Beltran to orchestrate this incident with the
goal of taking operational control of Whitmore Technologies."
A large screen lit up.
The entire courtroom fell silent as the video played.
The scene of Beltran restraining Sophia,
Marcella signaling from behind,
and Jimenez's cold voice:
"When he falls, she signs, and you get your cut. Don't worry, I'll handle it." No one spoke. The courtroom was filled only with the sound of hearts beating and silence. On the witness stand, Javier Solis approached, a white bandage still wrapped around his shoulder. He held the microphone, his voice hoarse but firm.
"Emilio Torres gave his life so Richard Whitmore could obtain this USB drive. He told me the truth needs someone to hold it, no matter the cost. I believe today we owe him that."
No one added anything more for a moment. Some reporters bowed their heads.
Some jury members wiped their eyes. Marcella was brought in at the end, her gray prison uniform making her seem strangely small. Her face was pale, eyes deeply sunken. When the judge asked if she had anything to say, she only shook her head slightly, her voice almost inaudible. "I'm sorry about the child."
Richard looked at her, no anger, no resentment. Just fleeting regret for the woman who could have chosen a different path. Jimenez bowed his head, offering no defense. His lawyers had abandoned him. Viga was on a national search list, and Beltran had passed. The network of power, once thought invincible, had crumbled in a single day. When the judge read the final verdict, Richard Whitmore is declared not guilty.
All charges are completely dismissed.
Cheers erupted outside.
Reporters surged toward the courthouse door. Broadcasting live nationally, headlines appeared just hours later.
"The vindicated man teaches the city about justice. Emilio Torres' memorial."
Service was simple, attended only by a few colleagues
and those who had believed in him. On the table was a photo of him in his officer uniform. His smile gentle. Richard stood before the photo, his voice deep. He believed justice isn't something everyone wants to hold because it's heavy.
But Emilio chose to carry it on his shoulders. And for that, he'll never truly be gone.
He placed a small plaque on the grave, engraved with the words, "The brave one who rekindled the light." Beside it was a pot of sunflowers blooming, planted by Sophia herself. Life slowly returned to normal.
Sophia returned to school, her hair freshly cut,
her smile brighter after long days of fear.
During art class, she gave her father a drawing, a man removing restraints from a child's wrist. With a sunny sky behind them, Richard looked at the drawing, moved and unable to speak. This moment right here, pure love between a father and daughter. If this touched your heart, show some love by liking this video. He sold most of his assets, keeping only the house and the sunflower garden. With the rest, he established the Sophia Foundation, supporting victims of misinformation and media fabrications. Javier and Valerie became co-founders. At the opening ceremony, the press saw Richard smile genuinely for the first time. He stood at the podium beside Valerie. When she asked, "Do you ever regret it?" he responded softly, "No. Because in the rubble, I found the light again, my daughter." The applause lasted a long time. In the first row, Sophia sat beside Mrs. Lopez, her eyes bright. From tragedy to triumph, this is what redemption looks like. If this story inspired you, consider sharing it with someone who needs hope today. Late afternoon, sunset poured over the back garden. Tall sunflowers stood erect, their petals swaying gently with the wind. Mrs. Lopez placed a hand on the girl's shoulder, saying softly, "Your mother will have to learn to live again. And you must learn to forgive." Sophia looked up at the sky where a few white clouds drifted slowly. Then she smiled. In her hand was a butterfly chrysalis that had just been born. She opened her palm, and the small butterfly spread its wings, circling the garden before vanishing in sunlight. Beautiful symbolism, right? What did the butterfly represent to you? Drop your interpretation in the comments. Richard watched from a distance, feeling a sense of peace he thought he'd never find again. He turned, walking toward the foundation gate where a large sign had just been installed. On it, the engraved image showed two hands removing silver restraints under the sun. Below was a bold line: "Justice begins when one person chooses to stand with the light." This quote should be on every courthouse in America. If you agree, comment "justice" below. The afternoon wind swept the palm leaves, they whispered. The last ray of sun fell on his hair, reflecting on the silver letters. Richard gently closed his eyes, letting the breeze wash his face softly, so softly. Like a farewell to the old years. In the distance, Sophia ran toward him, holding a small bouquet of sunflowers. "Daddy!" Her voice was clear, cutting the air. Richard turned, smiled, and embraced his daughter. And that's our bedtime story for today. A long journey where justice didn't come from powerful suits or tall buildings, but from the courage of people who dared to stand beside the truth. So, what did you think of this story? Which character made the greatest impression on you? Richard, the determined father protecting his daughter? Valerie, the strong woman fighting for what's right? Or Emilio, the young officer who chose sacrifice to preserve the light of truth? Please share your thoughts in the comments below. I'm genuinely interested in hearing which parts moved you most and which of their actions made you believe that goodness still exists, even in the darkest moments. Let's talk more about this story. Before we conclude this peaceful night, thank you for staying with me through this entire journey. Your time means everything.